Hey, Jon Taylor, welcome back.
Tammy,
What do you have for us today? We've been on a little series of themes, so I'm wondering if
I
there's a
know
continuation.
I ran out of inspiration there.
Oh,
Maybe we'll get some back. I
it's
think
all
this
good.
relates. I mean, we've been talking about what maturity is in a relationship, and I actually think this relates.
Okay.
Okay, so we're still on the theory. We're just not going to look at developmental theories.
Okay.
We're going to look at a dynamic that I think is really common for couples and individuals early in recovery, and that is feeling like a passenger in your relationship. Now, from a secure functioning standpoint, secure functioning comes out of Stan Tatkin's work, PACT, the psychobiological approach to therapy. Secure functioning states there can be no passengers in the relationship, functionally or perceptionally. You're going to have major breakdowns if we are either built to have a passenger driver dynamic, or if we are prone to perceive ourselves as a passenger, or if we're not the driver, then we're the passenger. So I do think this has to do with some maturity, and I want to talk about um, how to break that dynamic up, because I've seen it stall a lot of couples and individuals out early on. And again, the goal of these webinars is I want to give you practical tools and practical advice that you can start executing on day one of your recovery journey. Tools that make your relationships better. So let's start with, what are relationship passengers? So a relationship passenger is maybe someone who doesn't feel or act like they are a co-equal boss in their relationships. So the key feeling, or the key aspect there being, you don't have to feel like a grown up, or you don't have to feel like you're in charge, but you do have to act like it. So when it comes to decision making, for example, in any kind of co-equal adult intimate partnership, um, there are two adults that are part of that. So there are two perspectives, there are two agendas, there are two things that are wanted, there are multiple outcomes. And doing your job, not being a passenger in a situation like that, is speak up about what you see, speak up about what you want. At the same time, recognizing that if things are going well, we are co-equal. We're both bosses in this relationship. So me speaking up is not the same as me proclaiming an edict, or saying it must be this way. In most cases, we'll talk about betrayal specific at the end here. But it's not me proclaiming an edict. It's me throwing in, here's the information I have. Here's what I know about myself. Here's where I see this going for my happiness. Um, a relationship passenger may be someone who may have always had trouble taking up their space. Now, in this way, humans are like plants. Um, it's that time of year in the United States where everybody's yards and things are waking up. Um, if you have a plant that struggles to take root and to grow, um, you will have other plants in the surrounding area. They'll grow over into its space,
Hmm.
not because they're parasitic and not because they're trying to overpower it, but that's part of what keeps balance in an ecosystem, is that there's defined boundaries. There's defined individuals. So you may have always been maybe a more of a timid individual, or maybe conflict has always scared you, and so you may live a bit smaller. And even if your partner is not like a megalomaniac, I think the laws of nature dictate that if you're taking up less than your space, someone else is going to move into it. You want evidence of that? Look what happens in a house where multiple people live, and spaces are not clearly defined. Well, nothing was there, so I thought I could put my stuff there. It's just human tendency. So a passenger in a relationship may be someone who currently only has access to their freezing or fawning responses in the face of a partner who is scary, angry, overwhelming, or who knowingly uses the tactics of control. So I put that one in there because I want to highlight, I'm not using the term passenger to name call. or to shame. It's to put a finger on a dynamic that happens in a relationship that is not good for the future. So there can actually be some really legitimate reasons why we fall into that passenger dynamic or that passenger role. And again, from packed and secure functioning, we're less concerned about why we got to that place, and we're more concerned about, can we function properly? And it's not that we forget the factors that go in, but we move to a place of security first to solve the problems of insecurity from the past. So you can't rejigger a passenger driver dynamic while there's still a passenger driver dynamic. You have to stop the flow of that, and then you can recollect. What does it look like when you are in the individual dynamic? What does it look like when you are riding along? What does it look like when you're the passenger? You may have no opinion. You may literally feel like, I don't want anything here, which I think is an outlier, not a common occurrence for embodied integrated adults. We always have an opinion about something. It may not be a strong one. It may not be something we'd be upset if there was an agreement with, but everybody has a perspective. Everybody has an opinion. If you are feeling like you don't, you may be tied to that passenger seat. You may have a hard time being flexible out of there. You may be someone, when you're riding along, you might avoid conflict at all costs. In fact, you do. I'm not going to make eye contact. I'm not going to speak up. Like, just, you may have the mentality when your partner is on one, they just have to get it out of their system. Like, this just has to run its course. When you're in passenger mode, you may have an opinion that starts to ebb once it meets resistance initially. So this always happens. Again, something to prepare for in the normal course of relationships when two people are trying to figure something out. Generally, the first cell is not gonna hit a home run. So in secure functioning couples, we expect this. I'm not expecting just because I said it, you'll love it. I'm expecting that I might have to do some selling or some convincing or some resolving of concerns, because it's highly unlikely that we both arrived at the same opinion independently. Two bosses have to work together to have the same vision. It doesn't just come up. And it's not necessarily a sign of struggle or unworkability. It's again that mature adult acceptance. Oh, yep, we always have to kind of massage this thing to get it into shape for both of us. You may, if you're in the passenger position, you may experience a building of anger or resentment for the state of the relationship, while you're in a state of not being individuated or differentiated. So again, I'm riding along. I don't like where this is going, but it's all your fault. You keep insisting that it's this way. And again, being a passenger is not pathological. It's not an insult. It's to describe a physiological state that you have to be able to mitigate. So you may have a lot of anger and resentment building up for the things that you have no control over. And maybe that is the bulk of your grievance list. Again, in relationships, we all have grievances, things that don't work. If the bulk of it is, I never get my way, or we always do things their way, you're probably in that passenger position. You may not think of the well-being in others and the well-being of yourself at the same time, and you're probably more indexed on the well-being of others. So in secure functioning relationship, there's a balance, equal airtime, you could say. I think about myself and you and us simultaneously and equally. For folks who are in that passenger position, I know this from my personal experience, I usually get there when I'm over indexing on the you and us part. And I'm using my own needs almost as a pawn in chess. Well, if it gets us further down the road, I won't worry about myself right now. That's an easy habit for me to fall into. So your options, if you find yourself riding passenger, and I'm going to use the metaphor of the bus, you can stay on the bus and have little to no say in where it takes you, but you can't complain. So if you're not driving, you can't complain. You can insist that both of you stop the bus and reconfigure for secure functioning. How about we look through the lens of fairness? How about we look through the lens of justice? Let's be sensitive to each other. It's perfectly acceptable when you feel the dynamic has run away with you to turn to your partner and say, hey, this isn't working for me. Could we talk about why we're doing things the way that we're doing? And could we reach an agreement? Could we reach a setup that feels better for both of us? Unfortunately, if there's a chronic passenger-driver dynamic, in some cases as the passenger, you might have to get off the bus by yourself. Sometimes you'll be leaping from the bus and it won't come to a nice stop. But again, ultimately, that goes back to the recognition that I think every functional, mature adult has in their adult relationships is none of us have to be here. Nobody has a gun to our head. We make this what we want it to be or not. Unfortunately, I would say that that is the almost apocalyptic choice is, okay, you're not yielding, you're not working with me, you're not seeing this. I'm gonna have to jump from the speeding bus if I want this to stop. What it looks like when you are taking others for a ride, when you're the driver. You can't handle real confrontation or conflict. You might use emotions like being sullen, angry, pouty, or vengeful to get your partner to back off. So you may not have room for dissent. You may not have room for a different opinion. And not just, oh, I don't like this, but I can't hear it. You can't think that way. We have to erase this completely from existence. You may use your emotions to control or strongly influence the actions of others. Really interesting the other day. I forget what exactly brought this up in a session, but one of my clients said, I have all these feelings, and they're not super flattering, or they're not, not going to make my partner feel warm if I tell them that I feel them. And they said, I think I'm not going to talk to my partner about what I feel because I don't want to manipulate, I don't want to influence how she shows up in the relationship. And I said, I can applaud that. I really appreciate you not wanting to be emotionally unhygienic here. And I said, but I think the truth of it is, if it's an emotion you can't name and you can't speak to, then it is going to manipulate and control the relationship. So if you are someone who's early in recovery and you have buckets and buckets of shame and you can't even name that, if you have buckets of anger, loneliness, sadness, like all this stuff we see that people come to the start line of their recovery journey with, if you can't name that, you're going to pump it into other people. We talked about that in our object relations webinar a few weeks ago. So it's you may appear emotionless and you may even pride yourself. No, I don't use my emotions to control anything. Well, everybody has emotions. If you can't name them, you can't own them, you can't talk about them, you are going to pump them into other people and it will influence how they do things. So again, the driver is not a pathological role. I'm not calling names here, and I hope you won't use it that way either. It's to describe an emotional state, a misalignment that doesn't work for secure functioning relationships. You may not, if you're in the driver's seat, you probably don't think of the well-being of others and yourself at the same time. And you can index just the same way a passenger does. Well, I am thinking about us. A lot of drivers I see are actually angry because their own needs and feelings aren't actually represented. It's like they have an opinion. I'm getting what I want, but it has nothing to do with me. And so they feel shortchanged and they feel like I'm not really in charge. But if you watch the emotional interplay, they are driving the whole show. Or you may have someone who's more narcissistic and they may have a hard time thinking outside of themselves. And so it may feel right to them. Well, if I'm getting what I want, what better world could there be? You may feel like things are just fine while your partner feels like they are awful. That's usually a sign of a power imbalance. So again, remember, in adult relationships, we trust each other's perception because that's all we have. So if one partner is saying this is awful and another partner is saying this is great, You don't draw straws to see whose opinion you're going to look at. You look at, why do we feel like this is so different? What's going on? And again, usually it's a power imbalance, and usually the person who has the power feels that things are better than the person who doesn't have the power. You may lack a functional conscience. And so in extreme cases, you can have something like sociopathy or psychopathy, where there's not the actual structures in the brain that merit empathy and thinking twice about our actions. More often, what I see is a lack of a functional conscience. It's hurt so bad, live so out of misalignment and not know what to do. I've deadened that part of me that speaks up and says, wait a minute, that doesn't feel fair. How would you feel on the other end of this? I'm maybe running a little bit of an experiment right now with my 3-year-old, because you get to do that when you're a therapist and you have kids. But I'm really tracking how she's holding empathy and awareness of others, and she's about the age where she can start to formulate that. So we go on these walks at night. The weather's getting good now, and they'll ride bikes or walk or whatever. But her favorite thing to do, she loves flowers and she loves little berries that grow on bushes and stuff. Unfortunately, she wants to collect them. So she wants to pick flowers from our neighbor's yards, things like that. And she knows the line, "Hey, don't pick the flowers." But I started saying to her, "How would you feel if you grew pretty flowers in your yard and somebody came and took them because they wanted their mom to have them?" She said, "Oh, I wouldn't like it if somebody took my flowers." And I'm waiting, like, we're setting up these structures. Think of somebody else. How would you feel? Maybe they feel the same. I'm waiting for when it clicks for her on its own, when that map gets filled. So that's how functional conscience is built. It's not a matter of I don't have it. It's a matter of, if my environment calls for that, if I'm supported in getting there, thinking about the feelings of others in relation to my own action, if I'm supported in doing that and helps to regulate my own feelings along the way, then I can develop a functional conscious, and it makes sense to think that way in a relationship. So your options, as I see it, if you are the driver, you can keep going as you are. You can keep someone close, but you already know that they're not there because they love you and they're choosing you. They're there because you've made them afraid, you've trapped them, and you can't complain that they don't love you. So love and choosing comes in an arena of freedom. I'll give an example of this at the end. Number 2, you could work to consider why you feel that things are okay and your partner does not. You can't stop at "we're just different." That's a cop out. That's the surface. You have to go deeper. Why is my partner so unhappy and I feel like things are fine? You have to look through the lens of justice, fairness. Do we have a fair relationship? Identify how your current arrangement is actually self-harming. So maybe you are largely out for yourself, and you may always be. Some people are less socially attuned and more individually attuned. So maybe that is the case for you. You have to come face to face with the facts. If you're living close to somebody else, when your actions hurt them, it comes back to hurt you. It's like poisoning the water supply. You may not be going for a drink right now, but eventually you'll need a drink. And if you're pumping poison into somebody else and you know what they're drinking, it will come back to get you. So really looking at how your action or inaction is ultimately self-harming can be a way to stop, arrest that driver dynamic and promote something more fair. So what about in cases of betrayal? In cases of betrayal, we talk about the secret keeping or addicted folks submitting, yielding, or learning how to show up and support their partners. Maybe even working off of their partner's must-do list. I'm talking about this today because feelings of being a passenger for both the secret-keeping person and their betrayed partner are so prevalent early in recovery. Gosh, I can't get out. If I had an option to leave, I would. Now she's become demanding. Now it's all about, I have to do things her way, and I don't want to. The only way that you can give good support, this is what you have to reconcile yourself with. The only way you can give good support to the person that you devastated through your actions is to realize that you have broken the foundations of the relationship. Excuse me, I've got allergies active here. Um, you've broken the foundations of the relationship, and it is not your right. It would be your privilege to be given a second chance. And so it shifts from this is mine too, don't I get a say, to until the foundations are repaired where there can be trust. I always tell the couples I work with, if you don't have visceral safety, you have nothing. Until the foundations are repaired, neither of us get to live in the house, really. So if I broke it, the only fair thing is I bought it. I broke it, I fix it. That is the mature, that is the fair frame up here. So accept that you're given terms of continuance, and healthy terms of continuance are always fair right out of the gate. So fair can have to do with you've hampered me, you hurt me in this way, and I need some kind of restitution. That's fair. What is not fair is vengeance, punishment. Vengeance and punishment are not restitution. They are not justice. They are they're indulgent ends in and of themselves. Labor carried out in the name of justice serves a larger purpose. We're rebalancing the scales. In the best cases of justice, both parties can see how the time served or the punishment meted out or the restitution undertaken. In the best of cases, both parties can see early on how what they're doing is going to serve longer term justice. So um, if you're having the feelings, I would do this or I would feel this way, but my partner says I can't be mad, or my partner says I have to blah blah blah. You are being a passenger, and passengers don't have the right to complain about where they're being taken. So in cases like that, if you do not like the terms of continuance or you have questions about it, you talk to your partner, not from an entitled, I'm in a position to negotiate, but to say, is there any other arrangement we could make? This one feels untenable for me, or I'm going to have a hard time fulfilling this because I'm not bought in. Or maybe could you explain to me more of your thinking and your feeling behind this because I'm having a hard time making sense of why this is a good idea. So there's latitude, just not for you to dictate the terms of continuance in the relationship. That's upside down. If you've betrayed the sanctity of the commitment, it's upside down for you to be the one setting terms. Mm-hmm. So healing from betrayal is a couple task if you want your relationship to come through this stronger, and it's best completed when both parties accept their collaborative roles. And maybe I'll do a webinar on this more in depth later. I call the roles architect and builder. The person who has been keeping the secrets and betrayed, they're the builder. You get to do the grunt work. You get to dig around in the mud. You get to make sure the foundation is strong. The architect is the one for now who's saying, this is what our relationship needs to look like in order for me to consider continuing. It's not, this is what you must provide me so I can be happy. There's a difference there. So each has their specific job to do, but it's 100% a joint venture. Even early on in betrayal, it's still a joint venture. Nobody spearheads a couple's recovery that works. It's both of us together. I understand that maybe I've always struggled to have my voice. Maybe I've worried if I tell people what I really feel, they would leave me as the betrayed partner. I have to work to get very clear with you. Here's what I need to see in order to consider continuing with you. And as the person who's done the betraying, you just have to get to work changing or telling your partner, I'm not going to change. There is no middle ground. We'll see. It's yes, I will do it, or no, I won't. If you want to calm down an inflamed relationship dynamic early in recovery, I'd recommend looking first at the passenger-driver dynamic. Again, that's a place where functional adulting, functional maturity, secure functioning cannot come out of that. And it's largely, as you've noticed as we've talked about this, it's an attitude adjustment, not beating your relationship into submission. So let me give you an example. This couple that I worked with, she would often reach a breaking point, understandably so. He had betrayed her. She'd reach a breaking point and she would say, I need a break from you. Sometimes in a moment of big anger, she'd say, I'm done. We're done.
Mm.
And she would always ask, I need you to step back, like literally, or I need some time to myself. And he would become angry and he would become threatening, and even more in her face. And sometimes he would invoke um, his insecure version of what we were talking about in couples therapy. We are supposed to work together. You cannot leave.
Mm.
And we drilled this dynamic in a couple session one day, and he came to the conclusion pretty quick that, yeah, it doesn't make sense when she says I've got to go or I need space. It doesn't make sense for me to pull her in close and hold her tight. So he realized pretty soon, and he started calling. He arrived at, I need to learn as many versions of rolling out the red carpet as I can when she says I've got to go. And so we drilled this in a session. We got them both some good options, for dealing what was difficult in their partner around this dynamic. And they had a fight that night, similar fight. And he said, I could feel myself tightening up and I wanted to I wanted to pin her down. I wanted her to stay there. And instead I said, do you want me to get your shoes? She had said something like, I'm going for a walk and let's not plan on talking for a couple days. And he said, do you want me to get your shoes? And he felt the temperature and the pressure go way down. And he said, I was surprised. He said, I think I've avoided stuff like that because I thought it would make me so anxious and worrying, is she going to leave? And he said, I've had one of the best weekends in my recovery that I've ever had. He said, I feel embodied. I'm staying focused on my own work. And she's even commented to me, something seems like it shifted in you. It's never felt better. Now, they're wise enough to not look at that and say, we're fixed. Great.
Mhm.
But they're saying, now we know what to do. No passengers, no drivers. If somebody's speaking up and saying, hey, I got to stop here, the other person makes sure that there's a stop. Go ahead and get off the bus. Tell me where to come back to. There's room for you to come back on, the rolling out the red carpet. So um, there is workability, even in fear. It's always going to work better when both people feel like they can get what they need. So that is no passengers.
Oh, I love this. And yeah, when you were talking about, I do not have an opinion, I thought about how often, like, we'll say, what do you want for dinner? Well, I don't care, and we all care because you go, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. So it's like, I don't want that, but I don't care. And I'm like, yes, you do, And so I do think we all have an opinion. And I was thinking, when like you were talking about the person, selling, and I'm like, I feel like often in these relationship dynamics, there's one person who's a really good seller. And like you said, even with the powerful emotions. And so the other person is going like, I better buy this, even if I don't want this. And so to have the ability to, I really appreciate when you're saying, I think we're doing great and I think we're doing terrible. And to go, okay, both are real on your perception level. And so how do we get to the to the different to the in between, where it's mutually beneficial. I appreciate where you're talking about your 3-year-old, because I often say we're in emotional kindergarten, and I'm going, well, apparently we're closer to 3 years old instead of kindergarten. um, and really, what a hopeful story of, like, your client that you were just sharing, he went completely against his normal reactions, and it shifted things. Not like you said, it didn't magically fix everything, but gosh, that would be something I'd go, oh, that worked really well. I'm going to do that again.
Yeah, and it wasn't his hands tied. It was this recognition he had. Well, I've been trying to do this my way, and my partner has kept telling me this doesn't work. So even though it's elementary, we say, well, okay, well, we'll lean into your direction. Um, it, it's worked so far. Even better than that is we'll together find out what's best. We'll figure out what's best, for us as a coupleship. I suspect with this coupleship, they're going to stay at that one. And they're going to say that is what works best. Because when she says I'm out, she's not like at a half tank of gas. She's like out and running on fumes. Um, so it was this yielding. Well, I know what I want, but I have to listen to the other side here. And where does that direct me? And it doesn't surprise me that he immediately felt the reward because it was good for him too.
Hmm.
He was holding on to an angry, resentful, distancing person, rightly so. And then he would, surprise, surprise, he'd feel unloved, he'd feel unwanted, he'd feel a lot of shame.
Yeah, well, and I'm hopeful for them. I don't even know them, but I'm hopeful for them that her tank doesn't get so empty because they're doing more things that are nurturing, so there's less opportunity to have to pull, the full stop out. But, I think often too of going with the resistance is like, okay, rather than him fighting and controlling and, hanging on for dear life, he's okay, and here, let me get your shoes, so,
Yeah.
and I bet she was just like, startled it, that was what came up. So we've got some questions, but yeah, and then you were like, we should, like the whole, I highlighted it too. It's upside down for the betrayer setting the terms. I'm going to just comment on that real quick. I would love you to expand on that in future because I often hear, from partners of, and even addicts, it's like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that, and there's all of this hanging on to old behaviors and I won't do. So I really appreciated you saying it's upside down for the betrayer to be setting the terms. That is a really important message, because I hear partners feeling powerless when that happens, and the betraying partner feeling entitled to, well, I'll do these little things, but I'm not going to do that. So that would be really helpful to expand on.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, two bosses sounds like a war.
Let me speak to that.
Please. Yeah.
If your idea of bossship is hierarchy, who is the top of the pile, who's entitled to the biggest paycheck, who gets the primest cuts of meat, then yeah, bosshood is war, but that's not what bosshood is. That's an entitled bosshood, all about my rights, not about my responsibilities. Real bosshood ownership is about rights and responsibilities. These rights I have with my partner being in charge of this relationship comes with a lot of responsibility. Talk about more parts of kids' brains we're trying to put online with our older kids, my 12 and 15-year-old. This is what we're trying to drive home right now. We were talking about a lapse in chores, and my 15-year-old says the other night, he says, well, do you think you could make it more motivating? He has an after school job, and we don't pay him as well as his after school job does. He says, do you think you could make it more motivating? And I said, um, I mean, we could tie you getting to practice driving the car to whether you do your chores or not. And he says, well, no, that's a punishment. Like I'm saying, like, can you entice me? And I said, no, because the stuff we're asking you to do is just stuff that has to be done. Like it's not a preference. It's not inherently rewarding. It's not nice. And I said, and what you get from that is this, like you get to relax in a clean space. You get to get sick less often because there's not germs all over the place. You get to have a place where you can bring your friends to and not feel embarrassed. Like, um, so real mature ownership, bosshood is we have rights and responsibilities, and our rights are bolstered by how we belly up to the bar with responsibility. There's no hierarchy. So if you're going for two bosses and it's war, I'm going to say to you, you're probably immature about that. And it's bosshood in the sense of when we manage this right, everybody prospers. Not what can I extract from this before I cut and run.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like, well, a couple of things. First of all, I don't see any cars that have two steering wheels and two sets of things, so that they're fighting each other. And also, you talked about the bus, and I'm like, the bus driver, I'm maybe the boss, but I look at it as more you're responsible for getting all of these people safely through
Gosh,
to the next destination.
Tammy, I love that. Maybe those of you who have betrayed or are addicted in early recovery and you're feeling the burden of all you have to do, you have the privilege of getting people safely where they need to go, and it largely relies on how well you can drive the bus, at least early on. It is a privilege It's not an awful weight. It's not a punishment. It's the only way to prove that you're not treasonous anymore, is safely deliver your passengers where they need to go.
Yeah, and I'm, like with this, I'm going like there isn't a relationship if you are
No.
in a partnership and you perceive you're the boss, that even if you're the boss in an organization, the best bosses see it as a team and a
Yeah.
collaborative effort. Not if I'm demanding that you're my subordinate and I'm just constantly pressuring that, you're going to have a whole bunch of unhappy people.
Yeah.
Okay. In 12-step programs, it's common wisdom that expectations are premeditated resentments. While I understand this from my personal perspective, especially as it relates to my serenity, I've never understood if how this carries over into relationships, especially in a securely functioning partnership. Are there legitimate and healthy expectations in a committed relationship? This is another great question. So,
Yeah. So the 12 steps were written for individuals, not relationships. I think there were some semi-inspired attempts to say, no, no, this applies to relationships too, when they talk about the traditions and principles and things like that. But um, I would amend that saying for relationships, unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments. Relationships that don't have any expectations, no boundaries is what that means. An idea of what is better that we're going for, they don't thrive, they don't work, they devolve into the chaos of two people fighting. So in a relationship, any and all expectations can be on the table. You just have to square with, it's not an expectation for the relationship unless both of us agree it ought to be this way. That's where the salesmanship comes into. And keep in mind, we're not looking to just move stuff off the lot in sales. We're looking for people to enjoy being sold to. Have you ever been sold to by someone who's really good at it? It's a pleasure. It's great. You want to talk to that person again next time you need something. Um, so um, expectations need to be floated like all the time. It's not fair after something has occurred, if we haven't had a clear, both of us have agreed to expectation, it's not fair to throw, well, you should have. What is fair to throw around is, hey, we need some structure around this. We need a principle here because we keep fighting over the same thing. If it is the case of, I've told you I don't like this, then you might have to look for a way to get off the bus if your partner's not stopping, or coming to the table with you and making an agreement. So expectations are great for relationships. It's one of those things, though, you have to massage out between the two of you to make it work. And then what I see when I can help couples get to an expectation they've crafted together, um, they love upholding it. It's a moment of integrity. It's like one of the few things they can tangibly do to say, see, this relationship's important to me. See this thing that I'm doing that I wouldn't do without us having come up with it. I'm doing it. So uh, yeah, speak the expectations in your relationships, or they're premeditated resentments.
I found out my partner's porn addiction only a few weeks ago, as I discovered that it had moved beyond just porn towards interaction with other people. I as is so recent, I still haven't made up my mind about how to go forward. We have only been together for 2.5 years, and we were both young and could possibly move on our lives without each other. But I'm open to hearing and learning about his addiction and recover from this together or not. There's only one thing that I'm really scared of, that I stay and listen and I'm willing to recover, and my partner misunderstands this willingness as a weakness or as a sign that I will stay no matter what happens in our relationship. How do we deal with this?
So briefly, and this comes from Stan Tech and the setup. Um, in a co-constructed relationship, you're the king and queen of the land, and it is possible for the king and queen to commit treason against each other. So in this case, the king has committed treason, the queen is still on the throne, and the king is essentially in the dungeon because he's not adhering to the laws of the land. Um, as the queen, you can restore him to the throne, but you'd be a fool to do it if he didn't prove his loyalty again. So saying I'll give you another chance is not weakness, it's clemency. It's not weakness. It actually may be a form of justice. I can understand people make mistakes. I can understand, people learn as they go. If you are to be my co-equal partner, you have to earn it this time. It was given to you before, and you blew it up. So you have to earn it this time. Here are the conditions. So saying I'm willing to go forward with you, and again, this is not the passenger mentality, is not saying I'm willing to roll the dice. It's saying it's a no-go for me to consider if the following basic things are not changed. If you stay secretive, if you can't get sober, if you're not working a program, if you don't even think this is a problem, um, I would be a fool to restore you to the throne, and I'm not going to be a fool again. That's you've already put me in that position once. I hope that makes sense. There can be strength with compassion and mercy and grace, and that is this is conditional. And by the way, all adult relationships are conditional. Unconditional love in adult relationships, if you can do it, is not it's not good. Not good for adult relationships. There's always conditions, and there have to be. Otherwise, we're not responsible.
And I think communicating basically what you just communicated, is how you say this, I'm willing to stay from this standpoint. I'm not staying no matter what happens. We talk often about putting a relationship in safe harbor. I'm willing to stay and we'll see what your actions are. It's for a limited time. 30, 60, 90 days max. I'm going to see. I want to see if your actions are showing that you're on a different path, but I'm not staying no matter what, but use your words and communicate and show by your actions that you're holding healthy boundaries for you. It's not punishment or control, but it's absolutely, this is what I'm doing to make sure, just like Jon is saying, healthy boundaries, it's not a no matter what. This is what I'm looking to move towards. All of this stuff that Jon was talking about, the driver and the passenger, yeah, like we have to have there's got to be a road the car is going on too. So just finding what path you want to take. Okay, next question. 10 months in, 26 years of marriage, betrayed partner here. SA husband is doing the work and trying. And I thought I saw the shift in him a few months ago. However, he had a relapse in November and didn't disclose it till this month. So the swift, I feel, was grounded in lies and secrets, shift. I'm sorry. I feel was grounded in lies and secrets, trying to acknowledge again his hard work, but obviously scared. Thoughts on how to keep moving forward?
Things I'd consider if I were in your position is how many more times could I do one of those? And does my partner know what's at stake? And that's not a like, all right, well, you can get away with a slap on the wrist this time. It may not be clear. I often see people surprised what they thought would be a really clear, easy decision when they reach it is not. So that's the first thing I would consider. And I would make sure that you spell that out to your partner. If you feel this is true, I cannot do that again. You have to be honest with me. Um, and and then I think uh, you come up with some additional ideas and you ask your partner for help that increases transparency, because that's a violation of transparency there. I had something going on in my life that I did not tell you about. And I would also want my partner to understand you have to come to terms with why you did that, knowing what you knew, having built what we built. If you don't know why you did that, how you allowed that to happen, we're both in big trouble. So that's how I would scaffold that, how to move forward. And again, it's on that principle of you're not just moving forward on a wing and a prayer. It's concrete, it's measurable, it's observable, it's clear terms for continuance.
So the next one is a tough one too. 2 weeks ago, the day after our formal disclosure, my partner revealed he's a minor attracted person. So this apparently did not come up during formal disclosure. It was the sixth or seventh D day in 2.5 years. I feel numb, trapped, and overwhelmed. I've realized I've never had any power in this relationship. He's been the boss driving it with manipulation. I know it's not my job to help him heal, but I feel consumed by guilt and despair. Do I need to separate to heal? In doing so, I feel like I'll lose a, oh wow, that you'll lose a support system.
Mm.
So there may be more to that, like
Yeah, it sounds like there was. I
other
wonder.
family or friends or something. So,
Yeah, yeah. I wonder about if right now you're thinking about your partner as your support system. I'm sorry to say they're not.
right.
They're already not supportive, and of course that can change. I'm not bagging on someone that I haven't met, but gosh, that's devastating. What I would throw out there, if you haven't connected with Candace Christiansen and her work in the Prevention Project, she works at the intersection of minor attraction, that kind of stuff, and sex addiction. And she offers support for partners who find themselves in this position. Um, there are things to consider in your decision to stay or go, and there are some particular dynamics around manipulation, gaslighting that I think are pretty profound generally with this population. So Candace is an expert, and she was recently, you guys recently did something with her on neurodivergence.
Neurodivergence, yeah. And I just posted her website in, and we did a blog on, should I say or should I go? It's 4 parts, but of webinars, and then I put her website for Candace directly. She's coming back in June, so
Yeah, that's where my heart goes out to you. Get some good support specifically for that. There's a special brand of shame that comes along with that too for partners, and you need a support community that you don't have to hide this part of what's going on.
yeah, yeah, and we, we have the various, drop-in groups, and there are people that are partners of those attracted to or have, act out. There's also, I'm going to look it up. I think it's through ATSA or IVAT. I'll look it up and see if I can find that link quick for people who, and that's sex offenders. So that tends to go, they've already been caught. So I'll look and see, or email me, actually do that, TAMI@seekingintegrity.com. And I'll see if I can find some other resources for you. But I just want to be clear that, like Jon said, he would not be your support person. He's lied to you even during formal therapeutic disclosure. He, lied to you. So you having, a tribe of people, we have a number of resources, our online work groups, etc. I'm glad you're here. But there's lots more too. Okay, so the first person about the bosses says, my wife doesn't want to be teammates. She wants to be the boss.
I've been watching this one come up, and I have to go with my gut reaction here. Um, that is not a response or a question that feels like it's been honed by self-introspection and therapy. I don't know you, I don't know your background, but I've seen a lot of this, and smells familiar to me. So what I would say is I hope you're in individual therapy, and I hope you're looking at that. I hope you're looking to unwind any sense of victimhood you have in that. I hope you're looking to really explore that relationship dynamic, how you got there, and why you see it that way. Because this is not a, even when I'm dealing with couples with this is not a build a case for who's the bigger bully. That doesn't work. What I do with couples on this dynamic is I slice right down the middle. Why don't you guys care about something fair? Why haven't you built something better? So yeah, take it to therapy. I can't do much more with that here.
Yeah, my thought was I don't think she really wants to be, but things that, there's such a power dynamic difference, that, she, like you talked about with the house, where somebody will take over more space. Like, it's almost a forced situation. So to me, there hasn't been trust built so that she can depend on you to be a partner. So I hope
Yeah.
you work towards that. What would you advise if there were different expectations of one person has more expectations than the other? I think that's probably always true, don't you? That
Yeah,
somebody's
as
got more
unromantic
expectations.
as unromantic and all love marriage as this sounds like, that's a basic tenet of dating someone and deciding to marry. I mean, this might be a silly example, but it really mattered to me when my wife and I were dating, when we were approaching talking about marriage. I said to her, if you need mammals who aren't humans to live in our house with us, I'm not the person to live with. I don't want that. And
And how'd that work out for you?
well, we got married, and then we got a cat that was a mistake, and then we got two dogs that we love. So,
Oh,
but that changed. Those terms changed, and they can just don't bank on the relationship succeeding when that stuff changes. Like you just have to take it as is. So, I do think couples in recovery are afforded an opportunity that is kind of an awful opportunity, but it's here to reevaluate evaluate everything in the relationship. This is the time to show each other everything about who you are and what you want into the future. You may find we got together not knowing the whole picture. Addiction and secrets aside, we may not have really known or appreciated each other. Can we do that now? And if there's like, hey, our expectations are mutually exclusive, or you want something that I don't, um, there are worse reasons to part ways. um, Again, it's just that basic. We're not just dealing. It's that we're all here by choice. Nobody has a gun to their head. This relationship is whatever we want to make of it. And if we come to realize that fundamentally we don't have the stuff to build what we want, and we never will, if I were working with a couple like that, I would tell them, deciding to end this as friends and amicably is a successful outcome. So that happens, but again, it's not a one conversation. Well, you want more than I do, or you want something different. Like, especially if there's a relationship history and there's children involved, like dig into those differences, really understand where they're coming from. Um, Try to figure out how to make something that's fair. You don't have to fundamentally want all of the same things exactly. You have to be in a similar neighborhood to make it work. But that's where creativity and our ability to think and be flexible comes in. But yeah, coming forward, this is what I want. This is what I want. Oh gosh, those don't work together very well. You either figure out how to bridge the gap and make it okay for both people, or it'd be a deal breaker.
what do you recommend if there is an imbalance between who made more mistakes and what could be the cause?
Mm. So I don't think it's a matter of quantity of mistakes. I think it's a matter of what's the word? Lethality of mistakes. So mistakes that have to do with visceral safety. You told me you were faithful when you were not. I asked you point blank if you were cheating on me, and you lied to me. So mistakes, missteps that have to do with monkeying with someone's visceral safety and perception of reality are pretty big trespasses in a relationship. Um, Being grumpy, unworkable, selfish, short-sighted are all troublesome in a relationship too, but they are not mortal as the other ones are. So it's less of a matter of like piling all our mistakes on the scale to see who messed up. It's violations to core tenets of safety, fidelity, um, that kind of stuff. You only have to do it once to get a hefty sentence because it's pretty serious. Not that the other stuff is not serious. It's that it's like I said, it's less profound, it's less mortal, it's less fundamentally wounding. Still something that has to be looked at in the long term. So this is where I hope to get the couples that I work with is we have to fix the cracks in the foundation due to infidelity and unsafety first. And once we get there, we are looking for a level playing field relationships that both of us can come to the table with what works and what doesn't. Both of us are now constructing the relationship that we want and the requirements of it, and we both have to work to be a part there. But you can think about infidelity as the withholding of information that could have changed everything. You took away somebody's agency. to be a part of the relationship. If you wanted to date other people, you want to do a bunch of porn, and you let your partner know from the beginning, this is what I do and this is what I want to do, they would have the ability to say, oh yeah, I'm going to go no further. I don't want that, or I don't like that. Or to say, sounds good. I, I don't care about that. You do what you want to do. The point is, you took away their ability to choose because you kept a secret.
And my only comment is, and what could be the cause is to me less of a factor than what's going to be uh, different. How are we going to move forward and make sure that that mistake is not repeated? What's being proactive about that?
Yeah.
Okay. What if one person invests more time and effort and the other person doesn't understand it or doesn't see it that way?
The first thing I would look at, if this couple was sitting in my office and saying this, I would look at, did you two have a co-constructed agreement to begin with? Because my idea of what makes me an awesome partner and what makes our relationship work may not matter to you much. And that really has to be sorted out. So you can put a lot of time and effort into something, but it only matters to your partner if it matters to your partner. So I would say just make sure, if you're wanting your time and effort to count for something in a relationship, make sure that what you're doing matters to your partner. Otherwise, talk about uh, expectations being planted resentments. Um, so again, that happens all the time, but I would look at, were we working towards the same thing? Do we have the same idea of what was supposed to work for us?
I hope you can answer this one quick. Bouncing back on the answer you gave earlier, my betrayed partner has started thinking the 12 steps are great for single people in recovery, but not good for people still fighting to fix their coupleship with a DSTT informed therapy might apply better in those cases. Would you agree?
I don't know what DSTT is.
I don't either. Hope you, to me, I still have to do my individual work. Recovering Couples Anonymous might be helpful for the
Yeah.
two of you as a couple. But I don't think they're mutually exclusive. My 12-step meetings have lots of people who are in relationships and working on showing up with integrity in all relationships. So
That's the point of our series before this, is individual maturity is a necessity, and it's not something someone gives you or keeps you from. You develop it in yourself.
yes. Okay, you did it. Okay, thank you everyone. Thanks for the great
I
questions. We'll see you next time. Bye everyone.